By holding on to regrets, we're just punishing ourselves is no longer in our control. We're not our thoughts. We have thoughts, but we can choose whether or not to identify with them. And it's sort of this whole cat and mouse game of being a human being. Like we forget that and we identify with our thoughts, or we forget that we can let go of thoughts that are fucking us up and choose to nurture thoughts that help us. I got into these spiritual practices. What I really learned was that the more we're like avoiding or running away, like the fiercer it comes back and the more that we suffer. And I didn't necessarily mean to be the yoga punk guy. It just kind of happened because it happened to be the thing that I think kind of saved my life. I mean, I always talk about like if I wasn't doing punk, I'd probably be doing food.
Really?
I really, really love tacos.
Welcome to the Collaborative Resource Hub by Wellness Provisions. Our mission is to bridge the gap between mental health, wellness, and music, specifically rock and roll. I'm Amy McBride, owner of Wellness Provisions, the most badass wellness business. Wellness Provisions supplies rock and rollers with high-quality supplements. We give you a trustworthy place to go where you can essentially shop blindfolded. Our wellness kits were created out of a need to simplify your shopping experience and make it stress-free. You'll get the most effective nutrients in the least amount of bottles with the least trial and error. Immerse yourself in the Collaborative Resource Hub by going to our website where you'll have access to helpful resources that can nudge you in the right direction. Let's inspire each other. If that guy did it, so can you. Find the Collaborative Resource Hub interviews on YouTube, all major podcast platforms, and subscribe to our newsletter to stay in the loop. Last but not least, my legal disclaimer: nothing in this interview or the Collaborative Resource Hub substitutes medical advice. Please connect with your GP if you need medical guidance.
All right, Miguel, thank you so much for joining me from your delightful forest.
Yeah, I love my forest.
Yeah. How are you today?
I'm great. I feel good today.
Cool. So, all right, your resume is long here. You're the bassist of Teenage Bottlerocket. You are an author, owner, teacher at Yoga for Punks, and most importantly, a voracious taco lover.
I mean, I always talk about like if I wasn't doing punk, I'd probably be doing food.
Really?
I really, really love tacos.
So you do you like cooking them and like making them as much as you like eating them?
Oh yeah, both. Yeah, I do like handmade tortillas. I like big, make my own salsas. I'm really into it.
So like, because before anything else, we got to talk about tacos.
Sure.
And get that craving satiated. So do you like the small tortillas, like the double small ones, or like you like hard shell tacos?
I literally like every taco, but if I had to only eat one type of taco the rest of my life, it'd be the small double corn tortillas, because like I'm from Mexico City. Like that's like the food of my childhood. It's like tortilla meat.
And what do you put on it? Yeah, cilantro, onion.
I'm not big on raw onions, but I do like grilled onions. Usually just cilantro and salsa.
So like, what kind of salsas do you like?
I mean, lately I've been making like a red one out of dried. I use guajillo chilies and chile de árbol, and like just dried chilies, right? And then I'll do a fresh one that's jalapeno, habanero, a little bit of oil and salt, like super simple, but quite spicy.
That's awesome. Far out. Okay, so Teenage Bottlerocket, if you had to describe that band to someone who has not heard you guys before, how would you describe the group?
Like our bio, I think on Facebook just says we're a punk band, which leaves like some room for interpretation, but we mean it in like the purest form of the word. Like, we've been around for about 20 years, and a lot has happened in punk rock since the time that we got into punk to now. And I think that for us, we've always kind of been level. Like, we love the Ramones and straightforward, catchy, not super serious music. Like, you know, we feel like the rest of life is super heavy, and our band, we kind of like to be where you can get away from that. So songs about like skateboarding and pizza and that kind of thing. We don't have a taco song yet, but I have something kicking around in my head.
Yeah, you should, because you have a tour coming up. You should write the song and then, you know, work it out and play it like while you're on tour.
We're releasing a new song for this tour.
Oh, really?
I mean, by the time this airs, it'll be old hat and no one will care. But yeah,
like, there will have just been a new song out. Then we'll phrase it that way.
Yeah, there will. I think by then there will have been 2 new songs by August. So, yeah.
Are you working on an album then?
Yeah, I mean, we went and recorded last year, and the original plan was for the record to come out in March, but like that's just, so we're working on singles right now and music videos, and yeah, by the time this comes out, people will know. But yeah, next month we have a song coming out called Ghost Story that I wrote, and this really cool hand animated video. We hired this cartoonist. It took him like 600 hours to draw this thing by hand, and
wow.
I'm like super pumped. It was like kind of a dumb little song I wrote one day. Like my wife and I were kind of talking about the pandemic and life insurance, and like, what happens if one of us dies or something? And I was like, well, you know, I'm coming back. I'll haunt your ass, and here we are.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so Yoga for Punks. What's your mission behind that? What's your deal with Yoga for Punks?
It came about, like, I've been practicing meditation for many, many years, and I got into yoga, and I was like, man, these things are helping me so much. It was just such a kicking and screaming thing to get me open-minded enough to try this stuff. And so I had this idea of like, what if we just present it in a different way for different people? Because it's kind of teachings that I think are universal about like taking care of your mind and your body and trying to see things more clearly without all this added drama. So how do I present this in a way that speaks to other people like myself? Because like, I know a lot of these people aren't going to go out and grab like an Iyengar book or a copy of the Yoga Sutras or something. So as I was finishing up the first yoga teacher training I ever did, I had to do a final project. Mm-hmm. And I was on tour naturally, because I always tour except this last year. But so I was like, I'm just going to grab a camera and bring it on tour. And I'm going to convince people like, yo, after sound check, who wants to come and do yoga with me? Who wants to? And it kind of started growing a little that way. And Bottlerocket was set to play Pouza Fest in Montreal. And so I hit up the promoters and was like, hey, I'm finishing up a 200-hour yoga teacher training, and I'm there anyway. What do you guys think if I offer like a free yoga class at your festival? And they were like, we think that's a great idea. Here, we've got a local yoga teacher. She's going to help you set it up. And that was Emily, who now we're married and have 2 kids.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was such a like, we're like, oh, there's another yoga punk person. Anyhow, we started doing these classes at like festivals, Fest in Florida, Pouza. Like if I was in towns, I'd kind of do free yoga classes, and it kind of gained some steam right around the time my first book was coming out. It was all just kind of this like growing thing. And then really, it was the pandemic, I think, was the thing that all of a sudden we're like, you know, we're not going to be at any festivals. We're not going to have any classes this year. Like, what can we do? So we're like, why don't we put this online? Like, we're stupid. We should have put this online in the first place. Like, and here we are. And the response has been like really great. There's an alarming amount of punks with like bad backs or knee injuries or like mental. I don't know how much I can swear on this show. I'm trying to keep it really clean.
All you fucking want.
Okay. Like just shit going on, right? And so the reception's been really, really positive. And I didn't necessarily mean to be the yoga punk guy. It just kind of happened because it happened to be the thing that I think kind of saved my life. And, you know, so
well, and that's it, like amazing, successful ventures or, you know, projects, whatever, when it's just like your passions, I feel like, I mean, they always work, you know, they catch on, they're helping people, you know, whatever it is, it's like, if it's driving you, then it's gonna be worthwhile. So I guess, what led you like what was your path that led you, you know, to helping people?
So just like a quick background, my mom passed away when I was 16 years old. She died of cancer. And then when I was 17 years old, my sister was killed in a car wreck. And so like, at the time I was like a punk teenager playing in some bands, and obviously that really fucked me up. And I just kind of dove really heavily. Like, punk rock was already my life. You know, I was 16, 17 years old. I'd been playing in bands for a few years, but after that, like, I dropped out of high school. My dad made me get a GED and go to college, but I dropped out of high school and I was just like, I'm doing punk, and started touring a bunch, and joined Teenage Bottlerocket. And the band, we were just also driven and picking up a lot of steam, and touring all around the world, signed to Fat Records, like touring with No Effects. And all of my like teenage punk rock dreams, you know, came true. I kind of built this life that I really wanted for myself, but I was still like just so fucking depressed and like so full of sadness, and doing a lot of drugs, and kind of just wanted to die. And I had this like feeling of like, on paper my life is great, like my job is to party with my friends and tour with my favorite bands, like why am I so sad? And that kind of led me back to my mom, who had been like a really spiritual person, and she meditated, and so I started getting really into like Buddhist practices and meditations, and things I think my mom had tried to instill in me when I was younger. But, you know, when you're a punk and your mom says something's good, you know, fuck that. So
Yeah.
it took a lot of years to kind of get back there. But so I developed a really strong sitting meditation practice, and that started to really help me like a lot. And, you know, you always hear these whispers of like, oh, you like meditation, you should try yoga. And I was like, well, fuck that. Like, you know, I would see yoga and I would just think like bendy, flexible, blonde college girls, like, you know, namasteing and love and lighting. You know, I was like, that doesn't have anything to fucking do with me. But sure enough, like one day I landed in a yoga class, and the next day I landed in my second yoga class, and it just like built so fucking fast. And I dove in really, really deep. Like I went to India to study. I just, when I latched onto something, I like, and I really came to understand both meditation and physical yoga from like a more traditional perspective that didn't have anything to do with love and light or fucking Lululemon, or, you know, it had to do with people wanting to connect to life on a more meaningful level, and people wanting to stop all the clutter in their minds, and all these dots kind of clicked as far as like, this is a really punk rock thing in a way. And so I just kind of started talking about it like to people who would listen to me or posting about it on Facebook, and people started really connecting to it and sending me messages like, yo, you said this. It changed my mindset, and that led to articles, and that led to books, and that led to taking over the yoga studio I was teaching at and opening another yoga studio. And I mean, depending on if you talk to my wife and our business partner in Blossom Yoga, or you talk to me, like we say kind of the same thing, we just say it differently. But we say that we're teaching like traditional hatha yoga made accessible is the wording that they'll use. And I like to think of it as just bullshit free yoga. Like,
yeah, brass tacks, here's the bare bones that will create like the right practice for you. I think it says on your website, like without the flowery bullshit or whatever. And I think,
Totally.
yeah, that's a good way to describe it. So like, do you think, because, okay, it's a maybe a multi-layered question. So you dove into music and then you ended up diving into yoga and meditation, that spiritual kind of stuff. And I guess with the yoga and the meditation, was that a distraction at first, or did it end up providing, and if so, like how did it kind of help you, like, I imagine grieve the loss of like your mom and your sister and all of that change and stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't say it was a distraction at all. Honestly, it was the first thing in my life that made me really take an honest look at that stuff instead of trying to avoid dealing with it, because the band certainly was a distraction, and all the substance abuse was a distraction. It hurt too much for me to take a good look at it. And as I got into these spiritual practices, what I really learned was that the more we're like avoiding or running away, like the fiercer it comes back, and the more that we suffer. And I learned early on that path that there's a big difference between pain and suffering, and that as human beings, all of us are going to experience a lot of pain. Like people that we love die, and it's very painful, but that the true suffering comes from like us not nurturing that and being there for ourselves. The suffering comes from like trying to run away from things that we can't run away from.
Yeah. If someone asked you, since I mean, like you wrote, this is, I guess, the topic of one of your books, if someone is grieving the loss of a loved one, what is one or a couple of things most important that you would want to pass on to them to help them?
Obviously, like in the book, the Death of You, there's like some really in-depth meditation practices around death, which I think are very good. But as far as like general advice, there's a couple things. There's one, like you just got to let yourself break like all the way open, because if you don't, you're putting off the inevitable. And so it's a really loving thing to feel the entire weight of this pain and not run away. Like that's how you get through it, instead of around it too, right? And I think the second thing I would offer is like, look, everyone and their mom is going to offer you like condolences and their advice that they think is going to be helpful, and don't take it personally. Like it's probably gonna upset you, or like I know when my mom died, there was a lot of like God and prayers and like all this stuff, and it pissed me off at 16 and 17. But like you just gotta not take that personally. You gotta also not take the death personally. Like it doesn't weigh on your value as a human being. So there's something about prolonged spiritual practice, I think, that you start to see things as not so personal, even things that happen to you. Yeah. Like I'd like to say like the normal, like it gets better kind of stuff, because that's true, but like you don't want to fucking hear that.
No, I mean, because when you're in it, like it just like those words don't even make sense. Like
yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's an advert in less than 20 seconds. Did you know that Wellness Provisions offers one-on-one wellness sessions? Yep. So if you're seeking to get healthy and ahead in life, but feeling a little stuck, then book a session and let's get you unstuck. Now back to the interview.
Are you like a proponent of journaling at all then? Do you think was that ever helpful for you?
I think, I write a lot, and I think that there's a book called The Artist's Way, and I've read it a few times, and she gives this really good practice called just morning pages. And the basic premise is like, very first thing when you wake up, grab a notebook and write whatever the fuck, just 3 pages. Like, don't think about what you're writing. Just basically as fast as you can, fill 3 pages, put it away, and go. And it kind of comes for me to this idea that we're not our thoughts. Like we have thoughts, but we can choose whether or not to identify with them. And it's sort of this whole cat and mouse game of being a human being. Like we forget that and we identify with our thoughts, or we forget that we can kind of let go of thoughts that are fucking us up and choose to nurture thoughts that help us. And I think that the morning pages is a good way. Again, it's about not taking it so personally, right? Even our own thoughts. And the morning pages is a good way to just kind of like, okay, all these thoughts are rushing in, put them on fucking paper, let them go. Like, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We're retraining our mind to not have to grab onto all these thoughts, to just, oh, there's a thought. And there it goes.
Yeah. You can actually, you don't have to hold on to it and obsess over it. You can let it go. Yeah.
But you can also like tell someone that, and then they get in a cycle of like, okay, don't obsess about this thought. And then they start, you know, it's like a trick. It's a fucking tricky game, but I think, you know, in our fields, you get these glimpses of it, and you just know it to be true. Mm-hmm. And if it's been true before, you know it can be true again. So kind of becomes this game of like, game is the right word because it should be kind of fun, but this game of how many times can I remember in a day that I'm not my thoughts? How you know?
To kind of help rewire my brain, both for good and to let go of quicker, you know, more negative thoughts or just like ruminating on stuff that's not beneficial. I would have a few, you know, I don't know if you want to call it like a mantra thing, but just like positive, you know, if it's like a future goal or whatever. So I had a few like in my back pocket. So as soon as I realize I'm like in the thought that's one of like the negative, not helpful thoughts, then once I catch it, then I automatically have something good to replace it with. And then I just like think about that. Until then, I'm just like out of the woods.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's funny you say in your back pocket, because I literally carry a card in my pocket of things I'm working on or whatever. Like, if I have a negative thought that's particularly nagging over a period of time, I try to write the opposite of that thought and keep it in my pocket. So like several times a day, I'm looking at it, because if you think about like this ego mind trick trying to convince you that it's in charge, it's working around the clock. So if we want to like, we also have to work around the clock to rewire and to undo that stuff. So I think that that's a good practice. Like, if like people can poo-poo fucking positive affirmations all they want, but there's something really powerful about that. And I'm rereading this book right now called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Anker, where he's talking about neuroplasticity and, you know, the physical things they see in people's brains, how we can become really efficient at being negative, or we can be really efficient at being positive, depending on what we focus on. Yeah. And furthermore, he talks about how they did a bunch of studies at Harvard, and people who are in good moods are better problem solvers. And so like being happy kind of makes you smarter in a way. So,
I mean, I guess it probably somehow makes you more open to just possibility and open to seeing better, like having better periphery instead of like, you know, negatively focused, like tunnel vision on shit.
Absolutely. It opens up, you know, like to bring it back to Buddhism, it kind of brings you back to like beginner mind or whatever. You know, you just see a field of possibilities when you're in this more neutral or positive state than when you do when you're in a negative state. You just see helpless, like doom and gloom, or like problems to be solved. And I say this a lot to my students, like life isn't so much a problem that we're trying to solve. It's like an experience that we're trying to connect to.
Yeah, I like that wording. I also, I read that regular gratitude practice, they've seen that, you know, like rewire the brain and like change how the brain, is like wired and stuff.
Absolutely. Every night, last thing before I go to bed, I tell my wife 3 things I was grateful for that day, whether or not they have anything to do with her. But like, again, it's, you know, people think, and I don't even know if spiritual is the right word, because for some people that's like a no word or whatever, but like they think it's these big complex things, but really I've found it's more efficient to do very small, simple things but do them every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can only sit and meditate for 5 minutes, great. Just do it every day. And it doesn't have to be this big guided fancy fucking thing. It's just like sit there and breathe.
Yeah.
Or even just a simple practice like, what 3 things am I grateful for today? Or, you know, really small, tiny things make a big difference. And science is showing that like it literally tangibly makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. It's so cool. Yeah. Before when I get in bed, I turn off the lights and then I just run, like I just go until basically I fall asleep. The things that I'm grateful for that happened that day, or just in general, more like gratitude stuff. And that too, supposedly, I don't know like what kind of studies or whatever, but practicing gratitude at night before bed can improve the quality of sleep, I guess. Like
I believe that.
Yeah. It's so cool.
It is really cool.
I just finished reading this book. It's the stupidest title and it's like such a dumb cover, but it's so fucking good. This book
I'm gonna read it. I love shit like that.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's just like all broken down into like, I don't know, like little digestible like paragraphs and stuff. And it's really good. It's just like a dumb title, but it's really good.
You should email me that. Okay. Or that title of that book. I'm gonna suggest a book for you called The How of Happiness by Sonia Lyubomirsky. Do you know that book? It's fucking awesome. Anyhow.
Okay.
Yeah, let's trade book recommendations. We'll email after this.
Yeah. And let me say the title out loud for people that are listening to audio podcast and didn't see the book I just held up. Beyond Positive Thinking, a no-nonsense formula for getting what you want by Dr. Robert Anthony. Stupid title, fantastic content.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that brings me back to like me and my books. Like a lot of these fucking titles, like there's an older version of me. No fucking way do I see that book in a bookstore and think, oh, I should fucking read that. Like, no, but we're being turned off from so many positive things because of our biases or the way we grew up. So I'm just like, you know, how do I get through to people like this younger me? You know, you have to fucking like, you know, you want life to suck less. This is how you make life suck less. You just have to speak the language of the audience. Yeah, like totally. And I mean, real is subjective, but like real for you or me, you know, we like, that's how we fucking talk. This is how we understand the world. Like, you know, God, what was that like law of attraction lady who was running for president?
The only one I know is the Esther Abraham Hicks.
Marianne Williamson. Esther Hicks, though, that's a good book. But Marianne Williamson, she was like running for president, you know, up against Joe Biden or whatever. And I love her books. I love her work, but she is such like a flowery, new agey, feel good, love and light fucking like, you know, and I'm like, there's no fucking way any of my friends would ever read any of her books, even though she has so much good knowledge to share.
Yeah, it's you resonate with someone's vibe or you don't, you know? So
totally.
Yeah. It's just like being friends with people, I guess. You know, it's whatever like whatever makes sense in your head. So is there anything specifically like that you wish your younger self knew, you know, that could have saved your younger self a lot of bullshit that you know now?
I mean, I kind of look at it from the perspective of like things had to happen this way for me to understand things the way that I do. And, you know, I don't know that I necessarily want it to happen like another way. Like, you know, there's for sure like, yeah, I wish my mom and my sister or our drummer Brandon, like these people I love, like I wish they didn't die, but at the same time, you know, that's not real. So what I can do is take their lives and their deaths and integrate it into my own life and my own death. So as far as my own path and my own journey, no, I think that it happened the way it needed to happen. I do say that I wish junior high kids and high school kids had more access to this stuff, because generationally, I think that there could be big changes made. And especially now, negative social media and news feeds is such like a big fucking thing. I think it's kind of upon us to take broad sweeping efforts to, on a societal level, counteract that.
Yeah.
So for me, I ended up fine. I feel good. But for the kids, like what can we do?
Yeah, I don't know. Cause I mean, they have to, but I feel like a lot of young people a lot of them are thinking more and thinking for themselves more, and they are more open to all of this stuff, you know, like wellness is trending and it's amazing. It's great, you know, and there is like yoga everywhere and more people are talking about meditation. So if more, and that's what I'm trying to do, like with this project too, you know, is if more offbeat people are talking about this stuff, then you can connect with people who might not otherwise be seeking it out, I guess.
Totally. There's also like an element of like, how do, like, yes, I think like yoga, it's definitely trending and it's cool, like on a broad scale, but like, how do we make it cool for the like black t-shirt teenager, like smoking pot in his mom's basement, skateboarding, like really, you know, I have a friend who's a high school teacher in Laramie, Wyoming, where I grew up. And when I was still living there, she would bring me in once a year to like teach yoga and the majority of the students were like, you know, like, oh, this is great. But there was always like the one kid who was me, you know?
Yeah, that's like, fuck
like
this.
the one kid I wanted to think it was cool. Like there was a kid with like a Rise Against shirt and I was kind of like, oh, that's my buddies. And, you know, trying to like relate, but the more you do that, the more you come off as like some lame fucking dad punk or whatever. So I'm just like, how do we, like, I don't know that you can force it, but like, those are the people I'm concerned with. Those are the people I feel this call to help. Like,
yeah, but also
like, not just how do we make it popular? How do we make it like actually fucking cool?
Yeah, but it's also, you know, timing. Just like you wouldn't, like, you know, you wouldn't change your past. What you went through shaped who you are now and what you're doing. So it's like, I don't know. Everybody's got their journey and their timing when things click and, you know, click.
Yeah.
So do you believe in regrets then?
Not really. No. I mean, that's here's the thing. We live in this world where like everyone's past mistakes or whatever are being brought to light, you know. Like I had a buddy who had a TV show, did some stupid shit many years ago. It surfaced, fired, TV shows canceled, all this stuff. And you know, I think that there's something about being accountable for our past and for things that we've done. But I also think that true justice is paying for something once and moving on. And I think it was Miguel Ruiz, author of Four Agreements, who talked about that the first time I was introduced to it. But it's by like holding on to regrets, we're just punishing ourselves again and again and again for something that is no longer in our control. So it's like if we've done something hurtful to ourselves or to others in the past, like it's up to us to like make an effort to make amends and to make things right. But once that's happened, you know, we have paid the price. We have been punished, and it's time to let go and move on. And yeah, so not really, no.
Yeah, cool. I'm with you on that. In, I guess, yoga, in what ways have you seen, and this is a very broad question, in what ways have you seen yoga help people in your community? You know, I'm not talking about like Target, blonde haired.
Yeah. I mean, like at our studio in Wyoming, it was a lot of like older people, and I could see really clearly like they're fixing issues like hip mobility or back mobility. They're able to really like be in their bodies and aligned properly and breathe properly and just feel good existing in their bodies. So that's kind of, I would always joke about the old lady class. Like those were my regulars in my Wyoming studio, but they like loved the tattooed guy or whatever, you know, you wouldn't think, but I've seen a lot of like obviously physical benefits, but like in punk rock specifically, most of the messages that I receive are about how these things have helped people deal with trauma or loss or extended bouts of depression, suicidal thoughts, like really a lot of like mental and emotional issues. And there's so much of that in punk rock. And I think the really positive thing is seeing people's ability to sort of heal their pasts or let go of their pasts and move forward.
And then, so meditation, why is that important, and what can it kind of help to cultivate within someone?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like a physical yoga practice is, from a traditional standpoint, the only reason you do it is so that you can sit and meditate.
Okay.
And so it's all kind of one thing.
Yeah.
In my mind, but you always hear definitions of yoga like it's union and it's, you know, connection or whatever. But if you go back to Yoga Sutras, they define it as yoga chitta vritti nirodha is the verse, and it means yoga calms the fluctuations of the mind. And so this is from point A to Z. There's actually 8 steps, but anyhow, we're doing each of these steps to take us from really busy, cluttered mind to calm mind. And all of these practices, all of these gratitude practices, or card in my pocket, or a physical yoga practice, or pranayama and breathing, or diet, or exercise, or a seated meditation, every aspect of it just serves to help you calm your mind, because when your mind's a little bit calmer, you can see the world a little more clearly, you can connect a little more deeply, and you sort of regain the ability to choose. Like, is this how I want to spend my time? Is this how I want to live my life? Or is there something else?
Yeah. Yeah. You're more conscious to what you're doing. Yeah. And consuming.
And consciousness comes like sort of from non-thinking rather than thinking. Like we overthink all the time, but the insights we have or we gain kind of come from not thinking so much, like digging through all the bullshit and being like, oh, there's the thought, there's the useful.
Yeah, you know, and it's actually because a lot maybe it's a package getting delivered. Sorry, it sounded like someone was trying to
It's a ghost.
Or down. Yeah, apparently.
Teenage Bottlerocket ghost story out June 17th.
Perfect. A lot of people that I've talked to, like other musicians and stuff, they have gotten inspiration or clarity, you know, when they're exercising, or, well, for a lot of those people, exercising was their form of meditation. So when they were in that just clear-headed zone, then that's when they were experiencing this kind of clarity and stuff. So that's all.
It's all the same thing. It's just like meditation is really just that. You're sort of formalizing it and giving it a time and place so that maybe it happens more throughout the rest of your day, because like, I think that is who we really are. I think on some level, we're like calm, clear-minded beings. We just have to sort of relearn how to be that way. Because I know for sure my kids are that way. Like, my kids don't give a fuck what's going on Facebook, or, even what's going on like across the street. Like they care about what's in front of them. They're connected really deeply, and our life, like the first chunk of our life is kind of growing away from that. And if we're lucky, the second half of our life is growing back to that.
Yeah, hopefully. What do you tell people who say the inevitable, I can't meditate, like it doesn't work, I can't turn my brain off, it doesn't work for me?
I say like a few things. Like one, you're not trying to turn your brain off. Like I use this analogy that a teacher gave me about like horses with carrots. Like think of thoughts as horses, and like you're just fucking feeding every horse that comes by a carrot. Like of course there's going to be a million fucking horses. You're just handing out less carrots, so less horses will come by. But two, I'm like, people get so stuck in these ideas about what they think should be happening or what they think meditation is. So I'm like, just forget all about that. We're sitting and we're breathing, and that's it. And if thoughts come up, fine. If thoughts don't come up, fine. It doesn't, it's all irrelevant. We're sitting and breathing, and that's it.
Yeah.
And as long as you sat and we're breathing, it doesn't matter if like a million thoughts poured through your head. It just matters that you sat and were breathing and you kept remembering, oh, I'm sitting and breathing.
Yeah, that's what I do is, so if a thought really starts coming into my head, and when I realize I'm in like thinking a full sentence in my head, and then I catch that, and then I just go back to just focusing on my breath, or feeling like feeling like the weight in my feet, or whatever, just like connecting to something, and then it just recenters you.
It's kind of the anchor, right? So we're taking our mind and we're trying to take it from doing like many things at once to doing no things. And so a really good intermediary between that is, what if we have our mind doing one thing at a time? And that's why like breathing or concentrating on like a body sensation is so powerful. Like it's a big important step.
Yeah. Far out. Cool. Good. So I'm doing it well then.
You're doing fantastic.
Okay. So if you had advice or tips for someone to delay dying, what would be some of those tips?
I would say the best way to delay dying would be to make absolutely sure each and every day that you're actually living. Like it's so unpredictable and you don't know when it's gonna happen, but like it's not just about like pleasure and joy. Don't just like feed yourself a bunch of junk food. Oh, I might die tomorrow. But like be like, what's gonna nurture me in this moment? What's gonna really like feed my body and my soul? And if you're operating from this perspective, you're gonna tend to make good choices that will probably help you live a little longer.
Truth. Do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Alan Watts. He said, trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. And every time I hear that, I'm like, like.
Yeah. He was the one that said, paraphrasing here, water is just a word, or wet is just a word, and the word water doesn't make you wet. Him.
I think it was him. Yeah. But you can never intellectually understand something. I mean, you can try, but you'll never understand the way that you understand an experience.
Yeah. Do you have anything cool coming up for any of your multitude of things, including tacos? Like if, you have a new recipe you're going to try.
I mean, I'm cooking tacos this weekend, but I don't suppose that's much of Teenage Bottlerocket has a ton of music and tour dates coming out very, very soon. Stay tuned to teenagebottlerocket.com because we're coming We're coming to fucking party.
Sweet. Well, cool. Thank you. This has been brain food for me. I've enjoyed this chat and hearing what has shaped your life and how you're affecting people positively now. It's pretty far out.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool. All right. I will talk to you later. Have a wonderful day.